This is Transport Fever 2, another city building game, this time focused more on a supply chain logistics management. Well, as the name suggests, transport, you can do planes and trucks and buses and ships and all of that kind of stuff. And it's one of those amazing games that's rode in my Steam library for quite a while, and never really gave it as much playtime as I think it probably deserves. But it's interesting how it's got really good graphics and in some ways better than probably City Skylines 2, and yet it runs better and feels very optimized and polished. So anyways, there are definitely some things that City Skylines does which Transport Fever 2 doesn't, because it's not really a city building game as much as it is all about managing vehicles and routes, but it's definitely an interesting perspective on the genre. Anyways, today we are just riding along in the cab of one of the trucks in the game, and you know, that's right up my alley. Those casual games where you can just kind of take in the scenery while we talk about some random thing. And today what we're talking about is the problem of being really casual about what you say and just being loose and saying whatever you want. So we have this thing going on recently where high-ranking government officials were having a chat in the Signal app, and then they added a journalist into it, probably by accident. And so you have this situation where buffoonery is happening in our government. And it's ridiculous because you have high-ranking people who should know better. They should be disciplined. They should be symbols of wisdom on the public stage. And they're chatting about war-related events. They're talking about invading the Houthis and bombing the Houthis in Yemen. And this is in a chat group, and they've got their emojis, and they've got explosion emojis and flexing muscle emojis, and you know, just a lot of ridiculous stuff, you know. So this is something that put egg on their faces. This is a big deal in the news lately. And what stands out to me is, first of all, this is something that anybody really could be guilty of doing, right? Think about it. You can look at people in the government and you can say, well, how could they be so tone deaf and stupid and incompetent? But then I would challenge you, look at your text message strings. Look at the way you engage with others. Like, are you super disciplined, or are you maybe a little bit more in the neighborhood of sometimes saying things that are just reactionary, saying things that are kind of stupid, saying things that you probably wouldn't really want to say to the whole world? I was sitting in the office earlier this week with my HR manager. She's on our team, and anyways, we have this guy, and he is in the hospital getting treatment for something. And so we're sitting there, and we said, well, we should send this guy some flowers and stuff to his room in the hospital down in Salt Lake City to let him know that we remember him and we care about him and stuff, because, you know, if you're sitting in a hospital room bored, you know, you just kind of, we might enjoy that. So we decided we'll do this. I'll call the flower shop and have them send him some flowers and stuff. And we thought, well, you know, what else should we put in there? You know, maybe some playing cards or crossword puzzle or something like that. And anyways, at that point, my HR manager just decides to say, well, you know, maybe we should send some strippers up to his room. He'd like that. So, you know, she is pretty dialed in, I will tell you this. She's pretty dialed in when it comes to what she will say, what she won't say. She's very well versed in corporate legalese and knowing how to talk in circles and make sure that everyone's rear end is covered and all of that sort of BS. But between me and her, because we've worked together now for years, her guard's pretty much, you know, let down in my presence, because, you know, I'm not really concerned one way or the other. You know, it's just pretty much between me and her, right? So it's just you know, it's easy to make some kind of a silly joke, right? Like, is that a big deal? No, it's really not. Like, it's not exactly HR compliant, but it's really just a passing tongue-in-cheek random thing that somebody said. But then by the same measure, here's where I'm going with this. Would you, the things that you say behind closed doors, the things you say in jest, the things that you say when it doesn't really matter, the things you say to your friends, the things you say off the record, why wouldn't those things also be held to the same standard as you would have for public life? We have this notion that we should put on a show if important people are watching. But if it's just us and the buddies, then we let our guard down and we have a different standard that we live by. And one of the downsides to this is we start to feel like life is fake after a while. We start to feel like we're exhausted from all the things we have to do in life, because it just feels like we have to pretend all the time. And then we look forward to that moment when maybe we can kind of let our guard down and just be authentic. But maybe what we should do is have more of an attitude of working on ourselves so that those inappropriate things that we think are our normal way of talking and being, when we're able to let our hair down, if you will, maybe we should just change the foundation that we're building our character on. Because the truth is, if you wouldn't say it to the entire country on television, if you wouldn't want top brass in the government to say it to the public on the world stage, then maybe it shouldn't be the kind of thing that you say at all. Maybe you should just be quiet, shut up, and when you're tempted to say something, just don't say it. And ask yourself that question: is this edifying? Is this uplifting? Is this virtuous? Is this respectful? Is it in good taste? And if the answer is no, it probably isn't, then resist that feeling that for whatever reason you need to somehow, I guess, let off steam. Because we really don't need to have two standards. One standard that we use in the workplace and in public life, and another standard that we have for ourselves. Sometimes when we have that mentality, part of it comes from a lack of self-value, self-worth. Because if you think about it, you might say, well, I don't have to hold myself to as high of a standard as, say, the President of the United States should, because I'm not the president. I'm just a lowly person who doesn't really have a whole lot going for me. I'm not really high priority. I don't have people really paying too much attention to me, so I guess it doesn't matter what I do. And that reminds me a lot of that parable of the talents in the Bible, where there's this guy who gives 3 of his employees money to essentially manage in his absence. And he basically gives one guy, you know, 2 silver pieces, and another one he gives maybe 5, and another one he gives 10. Like, he gave each one different amounts to manage. And the 3 employees take this money that they've been entrusted with, and the ones that were given more money, they invest it, and they increase the amount that they have by investing it. And then when their master returns, they say, here's your money plus the investment that we, you know, have generated from having put your money to work. But the guy who had been given very little, he says, well, you gave me so little, you know, it just didn't seem like there was any point. So I just buried it out in the yard, and here it is back. Here's what you gave me, you know, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to do much with it anyway, so I just didn't do anything with it. And the master was infuriated by the guy who had just done absolutely nothing, because he thought that he hadn't been given enough to warrant, you know, taking pride. And sometimes it's that way with the words that we speak and the things that we say and the type of attitudes that we harbor. We think to ourselves, well, you know, if I was more important, if I was a higher priority person, then maybe, you know, I would do things a little bit different. But as it is, I'm not really anybody, so I guess I just don't need to worry about even trying. And then we write ourselves off. And sometimes, if we change the attitude we have in terms of whether we value ourselves, how we look at ourselves, then it starts to be easier to change the things we do. Because if you are valuing yourself, you're more likely to act in ways that show that value. So ask yourself that question. Do I value myself? Do I think that what I do matters? Am I serving a mission, a purpose higher than self? And if the answer is yes, if I believe that what I do matters, if I believe that there's a higher purpose to what I'm doing, if I believe that my life matters, then let me show that by holding myself to a higher standard. And it's true that most of us are not going to be on the world stage. We're not going to be, you know, in the White House or something. But I certainly think the way of the world these days puts into perspective the kind of problems which can arise when folks have double standards, when people who maybe have been immersed for a long time in the social media age find themselves in positions of public office, and they start to have bad habits, and we start to see these sorts of things take root in our society, and we say, well, how did we get here? Why are we here? And what can we do about it? Well, we can't control what people in governments are saying or doing. We can't control all of that, but we can value ourselves enough to control our thoughts, our actions, and the sorts of things that we do when we're engaging in the world around us. So practically, what does that mean? It means that there's always going to be these opportunities to engage in idle conversation, which is not edifying. And when you stop doing that, then you have to start being comfortable with a lot more silence. Silence is something we naturally tend to be pretty afraid of. because it just doesn't feel natural. But sometimes when you let go of all of those bad habits, then it leaves a void which allows better things to grow in the place of those old habits that we don't necessarily need anymore. You know, I think a lot of people believe that change in your life should be all about doing things that you believe in and then shunning things that you don't believe in. But if you're attracted to the light, it's not really about shunning things you don't believe in. It's more about being very mindful of what you value. And then when you figure that out, then at that point, make a deliberate choice to focus on being true to the things that you believe in. And if you focus on doing things that you believe in, doing things that bring value to your life and serve others, when you really understand that, then you don't have to necessarily worry too much about not doing old things anymore. There's just certain things that you don't do anymore, and it's not because you said I'm not going to do that anymore. It's just you understand that you don't really get any value out of the old habits, and so you just don't do them because you've replaced them with other things that are better, that are more healthy, that are more edifying. So look at life that way. And I think sometimes when we say, oh well, I guess I'll try it, to not say things that are inappropriate, or I'll try to not get angry, and then it just feels like you're a bomb waiting to go off. You're always just sort of crossing your fingers and hoping that you can get through the day without getting yourself into some kind of trouble, because it feels like doing the right thing is more like the exception to the rule instead of something that comes naturally. So just think about what's right. Think about what is seemly. Maybe a good example of what I'm talking about would be something like that old phrase, be British. The British Empire, love it or hate it, has been a source of culture for the Western world for quite some time. The way they speak is eloquent. The sense of being respectful in polite society, those sorts of values. Think about what the Queen, when Queen Elizabeth II was still alive, what would she say or do? What sort of demeanor would you expect from the crown? And why can't we in our daily lives have a little bit more of that sort of an attitude of respect by default, decorum by default, that we do what's right all the time, not that we just pretend to do what's right when we think important people are watching. As always, try to forgive yourself for the past, but make tomorrow a better day. As always, good luck on your adventure. Till next time. Thanks so much for watching.